We need to talk about Ezra Levant and Rebel News. Ezra is the leader of Rebel News, one of the largest right-wing media platforms here in Canada. Their slogan is to tell the other side of the story. Here's the problem. Ever since the trucker convoy, I don't think they've ever criticized Pierre Poilievre and his silence on many important issues to right-wingers. And they've also hardly ever talked about Jeremy MacKenzie and Diagolon.
The Emergencies Act.
Diagolon.
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 Diagolon. Diagolon.
They haven't talked about Jeremy MacKenzie's trumped up political charges, but they did talk about his debanking when it went viral. The thing is, yesterday on Monday, when Jeremy MacKenzie had one of his charges withdrawn, and in many ways he was vindicated in the eyes of the public, instead of coming to Jeremy's defenders to celebrate this win for Jeremy, Ezra Levant tweeted, "He's a Fed," implying that Jeremy MacKenzie is working with the feds, I guess. He didn't provide any evidence. Aside from this being a terrible display of journalism, not even showing any facts or showing your work, this is a very bad sign for Rebel News and Ezra Levant potentially being subversive in general. There's a lot to talk about on Controlled Opposition tonight, so let's get into it right now.
I promise you, I will not let you down.
The trucks parked outside illegally should move.
Canada's Conservatives will meet our Paris climate commitment
Enough with the woke. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I take that back.
to champion our conservative principles,
We are the party of law and order.
to call in the auditors.
We haven't yet decided whether we're going to call for the government to impose a mandatory test or vaccination.
And we will win the next election. Canada must not ignore the reality of climate change.
Why weren't Canadians vaccinated in January and February like everyone else?
Welcome, everybody, to Controlled Opposition. It is episode 24. I'm your host, Greg Wycliffe. It is fantastic to be here. It was kind of an emergency episode of Controlled Opposition tonight. Usually you do it on Thursday. Tonight is a Tuesday, and I thought, you know what? Something needs to be said about this as soon as possible. As soon as possible. I'm not going to put up with bullies in the right wing. I'm not going to put up with behavior that is just like uncalled for. And it's very congruent with the theme of the show, which is Controlled Opposition, which is this idea that there are subversive people in Canada who pretend to be our friend who actually might not be fighting for us. Of course, we've covered this a lot on the show when it comes to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party. And honestly, it makes my job with this show very easy because there are so many examples of Mr. Pierre Poilievre saying that he's going to fight for conservative values and then doing absolutely nothing about it. And in the past before, we have had some things to say about Rebel News attacking Jeremy in the past. We're going to talk about those clips tonight. And also along with that, we're going to be covering, of course, the tweet that happened yesterday where Ezra Levant said he's a Fed, referring to Jeremy MacKenzie. So we're going to talk about that tweet that appeared yesterday. Really, really bad sign. Like, honestly, such a bad sign. Some people say, hey, Greg, maybe he's just kidding. And I'll get into that, why that doesn't even matter. If he is kidding, it's a bad sign either way. We're going to be talking about, the history of what Ezra has done in the past, or what Rebel News has done in the past, and also Jeremy MacKenzie has done in the past as a dissident. Really, the goal of this show tonight is to figure out what the hell's going on here. Okay. Like, we have the self-proclaimed Rebel News, all about being a rebel, right? The other side of the story. And yet they are vilifying one of the number one rebels in the country, Jeremy MacKenzie. What the heck is going on here? Anyway, so let's get into this. You've probably already seen it. It's just crazy, guys. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So we'll start with Karima's tweet here. Karima tweeted this on Monday. Karima is a lawyer, for those who don't know. She does many other things, politics related, but she's into law. She studies law, and with, like, broadly with the political prosecution of Jeremy MacKenzie, I can't speak for Karima here, but from my perspective, Karima took great interest in what was happening to Jeremy MacKenzie. Even though Karima may not have agreed with everything that Jeremy does or did or says, she thought, let's look into these political charges that Jeremy's receiving. And she wrote an article about it, but she's also been breaking some of the news as she's been following it very closely, in some cases live tweeting in some of the courtrooms. But she tweeted this on Monday: breaking, careless use of firearm charges against Jeremy MacKenzie have been withdrawn. Jeremy MacKenzie entered into a common law peace bond. Now, I'm not Viva Fry, so I'm not super into like the legalities of things, but this is a huge win. This is a huge win for Jeremy because this charge was withdrawn. Now, for those who don't remember, because it's been quite a long saga now, this was the very first charge that came up against Jeremy MacKenzie. It was related to firearms, and this was the inception of Jeremy being a villain in the eyes of the Canadian public, in the eyes of the Canadian right wing, in the eyes of everybody. That they had this charge of firearms, reckless, whatever it is with a firearm. He must be some crazy right winger. He must be some crazy right winger. And we know how the media operates. We know how the mainstream media operates. We take this charge and say, hey, this is the entire character of Jeremy. He's just some guy who has firearms and he's crazy. But it got withdrawn. So this whole inception, this whole seed that in the popular news media of Jeremy being this villain has been withdrawn. This is the beginning of the vindication of Jeremy MacKenzie. And this is a huge deal because he is known as in the mainstream media as a villain, literally as a terrorist. And actually, I'll just jump to it. This is a clip of Sheila Gunn Reid from Rebel News kind of explaining, kind of describing Jeremy in so many terms. But here we go.
Now, to be clear, I don't personally know him whatsoever at all. And what I do know about him, I'm frankly not all that impressed with. I think he's a deeply troubled character who doesn't do himself or the people around him any real favors. And because of that, he is in an absolute world of hurt and trouble. But none of that changes the fact that MacKenzie should be able to use a bank in this country the way convicted terrorists and rapists can use them. And he's been ordered to stay away from booze, and I think that's probably a really great idea. Domestic assault, rape, child sex offenses, and still use a bank in this country. You can even be an outspoken, vulgar, crass individual with mental health and addiction struggles and still use a bank account in this country.
Wow. So she just lays on all of these other charges that Jeremy has gotten, saying, the assault, assuming it's real, implying it's real, smearing his character. Like, this is the stuff that the liberal media, the left-wing media, the mainstream media was doing, which is like, oh, he had this firearms charge. He must be a villain. And that has now been withdrawn. Yet here's Rebel News kind of taking these charges and saying, oh, no, it's that this is what defines his character. This is totally what defines his character. And this is super relevant to the Coots guys as well. I'm going to play the clip from Mr. Ezra Levant talking about the Coots guys, because there's also an important point here as well, because essentially, I'll just play the clip. This is actually really funny at the beginning. But the point I'm getting at here is essentially what Ezra is about to say is, hey, the reason we didn't support the Coots guys is because, well, they had more intense criminal charges that didn't have to do with just civil liberties violations. They didn't have to do with civil liberties violations. And that is like very, very problematic, because it's like, well, Ezra, what if these are, politically motivated charges that are completely unjustified, and this person is being picked on because of their political beliefs? It's like, well, as long as it's not a civil liberties violation, we can't help that person. So like in other words, the real dissidents, like the real people who are really getting picked on, apparently Rebel News cannot support. But we'll play the clip here so you can see what I'm talking about. This was filmed today, I think, outside of the Lethbridge courtroom of the Coots boys. Shout outs to the Coots 4. But the beginning of this is very funny.
The trial is almost a year away, but I'll come out and I'll let you know what I see. and then I'll give you my thoughts as best I can without stepping on the publication ban of what I think.
Liberal-like media made it. Good job, bud.
You can see that there are some people here who are...
The liberal light media made it. Looks like a beauty, by the way. That guy looks like an absolute beauty. Shout outs to that guy.
Upset that Rebel News is not championing these four men. I've had a few encounters like that. Someone who...
Whoa. What's that symbol? He seems to have some sort of symbol on his hat. Can you guys see that? Very interesting. Anyway, let's continue.
Like that, someone who, by the looks of him, would probably be a Rebel News supporter and probably was until recently. They don't understand why we're not crowdfunding for these men. And in some ways, I can't tell you that because of the publication ban. What I can tell you is that the money raised by both Rebel News and the Democracy Fund was to defend people for civil liberties offenses, people who committed civil disobedience. As you may know, because you may be a donor yourself, we did not crowdfund to defend people accused of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there is a crowdfunding page not run by us that if you want to give to these four men, you can certainly do so. And I'm not here to tell you to do so or not to do so. But I can explain that neither Rebel News nor the Democracy Fund will take our donors' money for men who are charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
So here we have once again the charges that have been levied from the state of these men, it's almost like the way in which Ezra is sharing this is like, yes, these accusations are super legitimate. These accusations during the trucker convoy of all times are like super legitimate accusations. Whereas when we're seeing a political accusation against Jeremy MacKenzie, for example, it's been withdrawn. And I would love to bring up the example a couple episodes before. I had Morgan May on the show, and she was charged with gas theft. She was thrown in jail for gas theft. And again, that's not a civil liberties violation. That is theft. I don't know what the specific charge was for Morgan, but she was thrown in jail because of that. That's never happened, by the way. Turns out someone did a freedom of information request, and that has never happened. So, stealing gas is not a civil liberties violation. So Rebel News would not crowdsource money to support someone like Morgan May, for example, even though it's a very fishy, it's a very smelly situation. And back to this initial tweet with Karima covering Jeremy, there is a lot of fishy stuff going on. There's a lot of very fishy stuff going on. She wrote a great article about it in Crier Media today. The prosecution of Jeremy MacKenzie, peace bonds, and possible political interference. And really, once again, shout outs to Karima for putting an interest in this and actually broadcasting it and telling the story, telling the other side of the story, you might say. And what's really baffling about this is Ezra Levant, if I'm not mistaken, is very, very, knowledgeable and wise when it comes to litigation and the law and, whether it's suing people suing him. I'm sure he's very, very privy to this sort of law stuff. So why would he not take an interest in Jeremy MacKenzie's cases? Why would he take an interest? Why would he not take an interest? And instead, he's just going to say something like he's a Fed. Right? Like that's very, very suspicious. But just to get into a quick excerpt from this article from Karima, an independent freedom of information, protection of privacy search revealed documents that were never shared during the disclosure process, even after multiple requests on behalf of the accused. In fact, their existence was denied by the authorities. This is a big deal. It shows that the Crown did not share important information with MacKenzie, even though he asked for it. This is potentially corrupt. This is potentially, malfeasance. This is potentially, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the law enforcement, whether it is the, people in government positions. This is potentially incompetence, potentially corruption. This is a story that Rebel News would want to cover. Is it not? Does Rebel News not want to cover, the corruption going on and the fishy behavior going on with political dissidents? With different, people being politically prosecuted with political prisoners. Obviously, this is something they would want to cover. So it's baffling why is not only Ezra Levant and Rebel News not following Jeremy's vindication in this case, but they're doing the complete opposite, where they're saying he's a Fed. He's a Fed. And, you know, some people might say, hey, Greg, maybe he's just kidding. He's just kidding, you guys. He's just kidding. He should clarify that, okay? He should clarify that. Ezra Levant has over 400,000 followers on Twitter, okay? That's a big platform. And he's actually done this before in terms of accusing people of being Feds. But it really is despicable behavior in my opinion. It's really disgusting behavior. I'm not going to do this justice, but you know, Jeremy MacKenzie is a Canadian veteran. Okay, he is a combat veteran, and for those who know what I mean when I say that, he's a combat veteran who fought in Afghanistan. He had friends around him die. Okay, he came back home to Canada, and he slowly but surely started to realize, you know what, things are. There's a lot of enemies here within Canada who are pretending to run our country and are just running it into the ground. And specifically, he spoke out and fought for Canada again with his words by calling out the Omar Khadr situation. This was one of Jeremy's first viral clips, calling out the Omar Khadr situation. This is bullshit. I guess I'm the bad guy now. Very iconic, very powerful speech from Jeremy MacKenzie, which I believe was retweeted by either Ezra Levant or Rebel News. So they were happy to kind of use that content to promote their brand, to promote their business, to use Jeremy's passion, anger, frustration, like fighting for his soul, fighting against the intense demoralization that veterans feel in this country for feeling so abandoned by their institutions. Ezra was happy to capture that moment, or Rebel News was happy to capture that moment and retweet it and use it to get their followers excited and to probably push them to a fundraiser. But then down the road, push comes to shove. Oh yeah, he's a Fed, and that's not it. That's not it. That was just one of the first speeches from Jeremy MacKenzie that went viral. There was also Jeremy MacKenzie's speech or viral video after the Portapique massacre, after the Nova Scotia shooting, the largest shooting in our history. Okay, and to this day, telling the other side of the story, there's a lot of unanswered questions with this story. You want to like potentially accuse people of being a Fed. How about the person who carried out this shooting, who may have, he made his own RCMP card? That's pretty interesting. Would like some follow-up questions on that one. I don't know why Rebel News didn't, drop that story. And if I'm not mistaken, is there not a lot of fishy behavior with there being a transaction of money with the shooter in question? Like that is it. If you want to talk about people potentially being Feds, then that's a great story, the Nova Scotia shooting. And guess what? Jeremy MacKenzie talked all about that in this video. He ranted. If you remember the video, it was him like on a Saskatchewan, like dirt road, basically, kind of just venting all of his questions about how fishy this situation was. And I hope this is all right to say, if I'm not mistaken, soon after that video went viral, it got taken down in many places because he was asking a lot of good questions, like a good political dissident does, right? Asking a lot of good questions. Jeremy MacKenzie, if I'm not mistaken, was soon put on a person of interest list by the RCMP of like, hey, this Jeremy MacKenzie guy, this just ginger veteran guy is really making us look bad. We better keep our eyes on him. And once again, the RCMP already starting to track a political dissident because they don't like what he's saying. This seems like the other side of the story, Mr. Levant. This is an exciting thing. This is a political dissident who's already being picked on by the RCMP and being given a tough time. And while we're on the topic, let's go to this Rebel News article, okay? Because this is a good one right here. The people need to be reminded of this, and for the people they know. This is during the trucker convoy, February 19th. Rebelnews.com leaked RCMP messages. Time for the protesters to hear our jackboots on the ground. What a scoop. What a scoop. For those who don't remember, RCMP currently in Ottawa to assist in the crackdown on peaceful protesters allegedly brag about using brutal force in a leaked group chat. This is a great scoop, Rebel News. Really got to say. And if you scroll down, you'll see these screenshots. Wow, look at these screenshots. And there's a nice Rebel News watermark on these screenshots. Wow, what a scoop. Great job. Great job, Rebel News. Amazing. How did they get these text messages? That's a whole other story, because they got the text messages from Jeremy MacKenzie, none other than Jeremy MacKenzie, the leaker, whoever this brave leaker was, trusted Jeremy MacKenzie, the Canadian veteran, the Canadian popular podcaster who hosts the Ragecast, and said, hey, man, do what you will with these screenshots. And Jeremy MacKenzie did the right thing and just posted them on his Telegram and said, hey, people should probably know about this. People should probably know about this. Jeremy didn't set up any fundraisers that I'm aware of. He didn't set up any websites or URLs that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure he just did the right thing. Didn't put any watermarks on it. Just posted them. And I don't know what the timing was, but soon after, sure enough, this article comes out from Rebel News with Rebel News watermarks on the screenshots. You know, you got to do what you got to do for Rebel News. Like, they are a business, and we're going to talk about that more. But it is pretty shameful that you're going to take a scoop like this from Jeremy MacKenzie, and then also vilify him later on. You know, and you're going to take a speech from Jeremy MacKenzie where he's passionately speaking about how frustrated he is with the Omar Khadr situation. You're going to use that to help your brand, help your business. But then later on, you're actually going to shit on this guy. You're going to call him a Fed, right? It sucks, man. This is seriously, like, if we're talking about personal relationships, like, this is really shitty behavior, man. Like, can you imagine if a friend did this to you in a similar situation? It's very, very shitty. And back to this kind of like this main tweet here. Being called, you know, someone like Jeremy MacKenzie or even myself, anyone who's right wing, anyone who has chosen to speak up about anything in this country that opposes the establishment, we are used to being called names. We're used to the establishment media saying, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you're anti-Semitic, whatever it is, these labels. What do these labels serve to do? These labels serve to dismiss the person, dehumanize the person. It's a very quick way of saying, I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you've said. I don't care what your intentions are. I don't care anything that you have to say. You're just a bad person. Get out. You're like everything about this person should be dismissed. That's what those labels serve. And the thing is, that's coming from the left wing. That's coming from the mainstream media. Saying he's a Fed serves the exact same purpose. It serves the exact same purpose. He's a Fed. He's a Fed. Dismiss him, disregard everything he says. He has bad intentions. It is super disappointing, because this is supposed to be Rebel News, right? This is supposed to be people on our side who are fighting with the dissidents, who are you know, holding each other up and protecting each other and stopping the corruption. But for some reason, with this scenario, with Rebel News or with Ezra Levant and Jeremy, for Jeremy's charges, political charges that he's dealing with, apparently Ezra does not care about the details whatsoever, and he's just going to say, "Hey, bro, I think you're a Fed, bro." And the ferryman brought up a great point in the replies, because I guess the logic would be that, oh, okay, so the charges have been withdrawn, therefore, because the charges were withdrawn, therefore, he's got to be a Fed, right? Which is, I'm sorry, like very Neanderthal thinking. That's very like Neanderthal thinking if it's that simple. But Ferryman points out the ferryman's told Randy Hillier and Derek Sloan had charges against them dropped. According to Rebel News, that's all the evidence you need to conclude that they must be informants or Feds. You're not stupid, Ezra. You're a bad faith actor. So he pointed out the fact that Ezra Rebel News reported on lockdown charges against Derek Sloan and Randy Hillier dropped. Lawyer explains the case. So that was just oh wow, that wasn't even that long ago. That was only like really only 10 days ago. So, you know, are they feds? Is that what that means, Ezra? Like just by the same logic, right? By the same logic. That's what that is. And yeah, I'll bring up, I don't know who this Wyatt Claypool person is, but in the replies, he said, I like how as soon as Ezra said this, half of Jeremy's fans just exposed themselves as anti-Semites. And neocon. Right. So this is what neocons do. This is what, you know, right-wing people do to people who they don't like, who are further right than them. This is what something that Pierre Poilievre would do. He would say, oh, yes, they're all just anti-Semites, right? They're all just feds. They're all just anti-Semites. This is what the so-called right-wing does to people they don't like, to people that they want to cancel. Okay. And if you've been watching the show, you can see how this is kind of a pattern we've seen with Pierre Poilievre. He called Christine Anderson a vile racist. Christine Anderson called Justin Trudeau a disgrace to democracy, but because of something else Christine Anderson said, we're not allowed to be tough against Justin Trudeau. We have to we have to cower and say, oh no, she's a vile racist. This is just like, you know, terrible. It's terrible to see that right-wing people don't realize that they're still kind of liberals. Like they're still doing the same thing. They're still doing the same thing of canceling people and calling them names. Oh, that person's a fed. That person's this. But yeah, I am going to play just another clip here. I covered this on episode 4, 20 episodes ago of Controlled Opposition. But essentially, to give you guys a reminder, what was happening is Jeremy got debanked. And then Rebel News decided to cover it. They decided to cover it because it was going viral. It was one of my most viewed videos on my YouTube channel is the phone call of Jeremy talking to the person at Scotiabank and him having it explained to him that he has been debanked, right? And when this clip went viral, then Rebel News jumped on it and said, okay, like we'll talk about this person being debanked. And the way in which Sheila Gunn Reid covered this story was really, once again, despicable, just as bad, I would say, or worse than the liberal media. And I already played one of the clips, but we'll play another one here.
And I'm going to take a pretty even-handed approach here because MacKenzie is a Canadian veteran, and I think he's dealing with some of the psychological fallout and trauma related to serving for 13 or 14 years. And I think that's why MacKenzie does many of the things he does and says many of the things he says. I don't know if MacKenzie's sober now, but I think alcohol played a big role in some of his bad behavior, frankly, much of his bad behavior.
Some people watching that might say, oh, Greg, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. That is bad. That is like the definition of being subversive. That's the definition of being passive aggressive. That's the exact same thing that the media does to right wingers. Do you think the media goes on and says, oh, like Greg Wycliffe, right wingers, they're all racist neo-Nazis. They're violent terrorists. They don't say that. They say something like, oh, well, you know, a lot of these right wingers tend to have ties to things that have to do with extremism, which might be a little bit problematic. You know, right wingers seem to have this tendency to be right. It's not directly attacking their character, but it's this sort of passive aggressive subversive thing. And the viewer takes away, oh my God, they're Nazis. Oh my God, they're terrible. And in that case, with Sheila Gunn Reid from Rebel News, they take away, oh my God, Jeremy must be like some drunk, crazy veteran. That's the message that Rebel News sent their viewers about Jeremy MacKenzie after he got debanked. That was a real, I mean, that's gross. And this is exactly, you know, cue the clip. Where's the clip of Justin Trudeau telling Brock, I forget his last name, telling the veteran though, like, you know, you're asking for more than we're able to give right now. It's the same level of disgust where it's like, hey, we're Rebel News. We're going to stand up for freedom fighters, for veterans, for right-wing Canadians. And, oh, this super popular dissident? Yeah, this super popular dissident guy whose content we've used before, he's basically this drunk, crazy veteran anyway. I really hope he gets help. It's gross, man. It's totally gross. It's totally shameful. It's totally dishonorable. It's all of the things that we don't like about liberal media. It's all the things we don't like about the liberal establishment. Keyword establishment. And while we're on the topic, I got to point out, has Ezra Levant ever, or anyone at Rebel News, criticized Pierre Poilievre since he's been leading the Conservative Party, since the trucker convoy? There's a lot to criticize this guy about. I mean, I could probably look it up right now, actually. The amount of times that Rebel News... Let's actually, this might be fun. Let's do this. Let's look up the amount of times Rebel News has talked about mass migration. I mean, quite a few times. Quite a few times. Let's bring it up here. Mass immigration... Oh man, yeah. There's like 38 pages here. I wonder how far back it goes. And if you're a right winger, obviously mass migration is a concern of yours. Obviously, mass migration is a concern of yours. Canada needs immigrants who share our values. It's all about ideas, guys. It's all about ideas. Anyway, of course, my point is that mass migration is a concern that right wingers have. Okay, and Pierre Poilievre does not even oppose mass migration. And there's a whole like very interesting like interplay here between the Conservative Party of Canada. You have the Conservative Party of Canada up here, and then you have the people down here. Okay, you have all the people down here who want to be conservative. They're freedom fighters. They want to get Trudeau out. They want to stop the country from succumbing to globalism. All these people down here want change. They want the corruption out. Okay, they want to save their country from all these UN Sustainable Development Goals and all that. Okay, and then you have the Conservative Party up here, who's not doing that. They're not doing that. They might say a few things about the World Economic Forum here and there. They might say some lip service of like, we're going to fight for your freedom. We're going to stop the woke, right? But they don't do that. And the thing is, in between the people and the Conservative Party, you have this little layer, this insulation layer. You got this nice little layer of insulation. And in this insulation, you have right-wing influencers. You have people like Rebel News or True North, or even someone like Billboard Chris or Josh Alexander. But the thing is, they are saying these. Billboard Chris and Josh Alexander are criticizing the Conservative Party, right? So that's not good for the Conservative Party. They're not even going to have any relationship. But there's a bunch of other people in here in this insulation layer, Rebel News included, where they might talk about Billboard Chris. And they'll say, yeah, like we love Billboard Chris, and yeah, we're gonna help Josh Alexander, and yeah, we're gonna help someone like Archer Pawlowski. They're saying all these things. They're saying we're going to stop the woke. They're saying that we are going to talk about these vaccines. We're going to talk about mass migration. We're going to talk about all of these horrible things that have gone on. But and the people, and by the way, the people at the bottom layer, they love that. They eat it up. They love it when the insulation layer talks about all this. But guess what? The people at the top get away with not talking about these things. They get away with not fighting for these things in the media, in the House of Commons. They get away with not doing their job. So it's interesting how there's like this little insulation layer of platforms like Rebel News or other, so-called right-wing influencers who are not talking about these things. Or who are talking about these things, but don't actually push up the pressure. They don't push up the pressure to the Conservative Party with these politicians. They almost protect them. They protect them from insulation, and they do this sort of sleight of hand where it's like, yes, you support Rebel News because we talk about the transgender issue. We don't criticize Pierre Poilievre. Therefore, it's like the same thing, right? Like it's basically Pierre Poilievre opposes the transgender issue, even though he doesn't say anything because he's nice with Rebel News. That was kind of a convoluted way of explaining it, but there is a very interesting sort of interplay here that's going on. Explaining subversion is not easy on purpose. Okay. There's a reason why it's subversion. It's because it's tricky, it's sneaky, it's unclear. It's all about deceiving people, right? It's all about the sort of, the false opposition, the false hero. Actually, this is kind of funny. We were just talking about mass migration. I'll bring this up. This is Rebel News. Dutch Prime Minister resigns as coalition government collapses over mass migration. Right? And what I think is funny here is that it's like, we're going to talk about the troubles of mass migration in the Netherlands. You know, what about the mass migration in Canada? You know, come on. But speaking of things going outside of Canada, and because we're talking about Ezra Levant, I just need to point out something that really irritated me the other day, because when it comes to the idea of controlled opposition, I'm trying to find the best way to explain it. I'm trying to find the best way to have people identify it. And I came up with this concept of, you know, what is the outcome? What is the result? To use the biblical analogy, it's what kind of fruit are these people bearing, or this group, or this platform, or this organization? What is the fruit that these people bear? And you can know someone by the fruit. And to say, you know, things that have bared great fruit for people who oppose globalism, I would argue, are the trucker convoy, of course. This is something that physically applied pressure to the people in Ottawa, and it resulted in the reversal of mandates. It resulted in movements across the world being inspired to oppose globalism in creative ways. It resulted in as I said, the reversal of certain mandates in provinces almost immediately. It really was like the beginning of the reversal of what was going on there. That is fruit. That is fruit. Like that movement bared fruit for right wingers, freedom fighters, just for, people who wanted to go back to normal in general, really. Another thing would be the PPC. People can say what they want about the PPC, but some of the fruit that they bared is at least they are a party that was on the ballot that represented opposing lockdowns, for example, that represented opposing mass migration, for example. You can talk to PPC in different areas across the country. People have met other people because of the PPC. It has caused some sort of network effect where like-minded Canadians can connect with one another. This is a worthwhile fruit. There's a lot of people who I've met through politics. It started with the PPC. Okay, so that is something that people have put money into, much like the trucker convoy, because this is what we do when we try to save the country. We try to, where are we going to put our money, right? Trucker convoy received a lot of money, bared a lot of fruit. PPC received some money, bared some fruit in terms of getting people together, getting an anti-globalist voice out there, and collectivizing people. And I'll talk about Diagolon and Jeremy MacKenzie, of course. What kind of fruit does Diagolon and Jeremy MacKenzie bear? Quite a lot. If you're familiar with Diagolon, which is just a nickname for his podcast community, you would know that they're all about finding your friends. This is a sort of like trend or idea that Jeremy came up with basically in the middle of the pandemic when people are feeling isolated and alone and et cetera, and said, hey, let's find one another. Let's find like-minded people, start doing more events. And I'll never forget the potluck dinner I went to. It was like, I think it was like summer. It was winter 2021 before the convoy. Like the December before the convoy, and I got invited to this like Diagolon meetup, and it was this very heartwarming thing, no masks on anyone, which was a big deal at the time, especially if you were unvaccinated. And it was this beautiful thing. That was the fruit that was bared from Jeremy MacKenzie, this veteran and Canadian podcaster. And there's many other fruit that has come from Jeremy MacKenzie himself, like these viral clips that inspire people, that push the conversation forward. I've actually had conversations with normie friends about some clips from Jeremy MacKenzie where they're like, questioning how much they watch sports ball or whatever. And, the questions he brought up for the RCMP regarding the Nova Scotia shooting, that was such powerful fruit that the RCMP had to say, like, hold up, we got to put this guy on a person of interest list. Okay, this is fruit that is being bared that we can sink our teeth into and that are valuable. Okay, And another more important fruit that we're seeing right now with Jeremy, actually, that people should be getting behind if they haven't already, are these. Oh, I lost the link. Are these cases that are going on with Jeremy? Because as Karima Saad is pointing out, like in her article, this is very, very sketchy what's going on. This is very questionable what's going on in our systems of power. This is something that we should be looking at. And in many ways, the fruit that Jeremy is bearing here is, hey, I'm here to basically test to see how corrupt this system is. He's spent over $100,000 on a lawyer. Like, he is really testing the system to see if political dissidents have a fighting chance, to see how corrupt the judicial system is, the law enforcement system is, and also, the various governments are. This is important. Like, in the fight against globalism, or in the fight that we're in, this is what needs to happen. This is part of the path forward. A lot of people like to say, oh, we'll never win elections and that's it. We'll never win elections and they're corrupt and that's it. And it's not just about elections. There needs to be the testing of our different institutions. And we're seeing that very, very much with these political charges against Jeremy MacKenzie. Those are fruit. These are fruit that this political dissident is bearing. This is how we know these people are not controlled opposition. Now, I talked about sending money, or putting our money behind something like the PPC, like the trucker convoy, like Jeremy MacKenzie, if you want to, donate money to his podcast or to his stream. Now, what about something like Rebel News? What fruit do we receive from Rebel News? Because as I mentioned, a rant from Jeremy MacKenzie where he's talking about something provocative and interesting, that started a conversation with my normie friend. That's a sign that his rhetoric, that his commentary, his content was reaching out of the echo chamber to actually, have a normie start to even think about something. To me, that is a positive fruit. Does Rebel News content do the same thing? Can you share a Rebel News video with your normie friend? What would they think if you shared a Rebel News video with your normie centrist apolitical friend? To be honest, if I were to answer that question, they'd probably think I was crazy. And it's not to say that I don't like Rebel News content necessarily, but there is a certain tone. There is a certain bias that comes across very strongly in Rebel News videos. And I don't know if it moves the needle. I don't know if Rebel News videos are reaching outside of the echo chamber. And I fear that what Rebel News videos might be doing are simply terrifying people and saying, oh my God, it's Justin Trudeau and we need to stop Justin Trudeau. This is horrible. This is bad. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you send money to this fundraiser. That has nothing to do with building a community. That has nothing to do with starting meaningful conversations to try and sway people to change this country. It has a lot to do with sitting alone in your basement, watching Rebel News videos and sending them money. That's what it has a lot to do with that I can see from where I'm sitting. What is that fruit? What fruit is that bearing? What sort of outcome are we getting here by sending Rebel News videos to one another all day? Is that going to save the country? I don't know. And I brought up this is a really funny comic. You've maybe seen him before. His name's Bob, I believe. Let me just drag it over here. Oh, let me hide that. Fear not, my lady. I am signing another online petition. And you can see the dragon in the background, just terrorizing the land. And I would like to add augment this. If this black dragon here were Justin Trudeau, for example, and you would just change this to fear not, my lady. I am sending money to Rebel News. Fear not, my lady. I am voting for Pierre Poilievre. Fear not, my lady. I'm gonna finish. Fear not, my lady. I just got to finish this Jordan Peterson podcast. Just let me finish this Jordan Peterson podcast, then I can go slay the dragon. right? This is really what I'm talking about when it comes to bearing the fruit. Are these people fearlessly going out to slay the dragon? Are they running out there to slay the dragon, to fight the evil, to fight the corruption? Or are they just kind of, encouraging you to sit on your phone and send in money? And don't get me wrong. Like, there is a lot of value to creating content and creating the right kind of content. And I think Rebel News has created a lot of great content. So that's not what I'm trying to say here. But when it comes to this, ongoing thing of how do we determine who is controlled opposition and who is not, that's something that we look at. What is the outcome of, another great example is comparing Jeremy MacKenzie's fruit maybe to the fruit of Rebel News. Jeremy MacKenzie, because if you imagine how much money Rebel News receives versus how much money Jeremy MacKenzie receives, it's probably not even comparable. Jeremy MacKenzie is just one guy. He sometimes streams a few times a week, and he receives donations from people occasionally when they're watching. Okay. But what you get out of that, if you actually watch and enjoy his content, you get comedy, you get news, you get inspired, you laugh, you cry, you might actually get a community out of it. You might find like-minded people. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck if you're a fan of Jeremy MacKenzie and you're sending him money, right? You receive that value without even sending him money necessarily. But by supporting him, you're helping keep that thing alive. Whereas, compared to the amount of money that Rebel News might get, is it the same sort of apples to apples comparison? Because I don't know if there's does Rebel News do community building? Are they doing things like that? Yeah. What are the size of the fruit in comparison? And I hate to do part of me hates to do this because I don't want to because it seems very gossipy. It seems kind of like low hanging fruit. But it is something that needs to be addressed in this vein, which is the fact that Ezra Levant is running a business and the business is Rebel News. Okay. So speaking of the fruit that's being bared, what is the outcome? What is the outcome that people are getting? What is the main goal of Rebel News? Is it to get an anti-globalist in power? Because I don't think it is, because they are, passively supporting Pierre Poilievre by not criticizing him. So I don't know if that is the goal of Rebel News, and maybe the goal of Rebel News is just to make money. Any business wants to make money. So maybe that is their primary goal. So it's not even a criticism. It's just kind of more of a fact that if you're running a business, your goal is to make money first and foremost. And this is where it kind of upset me. I saw this the other day, and I could have it really kind of bothered me because I am somebody who wants to see results. I am someone who wants to see an outcome with in the Canadian right wing in terms of moving the needle, making sure people are spending their money on something that's going to give them a result to try and either reach out of the echo chamber or try to actually stop corruption. And I saw a tweet from Rebel News, and it says, Ezra Levant is with our Rebel videographer to find out the truth about Hungary, a country that is routinely demonized in the mainstream media. To see all of our reports, visit thetruthabouthungary.com. And if you can help us crowdfund the cost of our citizen journalism, please consider chipping in a few dollars at the same website too. And for those who don't know, Ezra, I believe a week earlier, was in Marseille, France, to cover some of the riots going on in France. And, fair enough. You want to get on the ground there. You want to try and capture some of what's going on with the riots in France. That's admirable enough. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, maybe Ezra is just kind of on a Euro trip. Marseille, France. I'm sure there's not riots everywhere in Europe. I'm sure there's a lot of nice things to check out. And again, but if you're going to, give us some content, then so be it. But this thing in Hungary is a little more kind of, because if you go to the next tweet, it says, inside the Nazi communist house of terror in Budapest, Ezra Levant visits a museum. honoring the victims of both Hitler's Nazis and Stalin's communists, sharing his thoughts on the uniqueness of this Hungarian cultural site. So now you're just visiting, now you're just visiting a museum. Now you're just touring tourist sites in Hungary and calling it news? Ezra Levant visits a museum. We got the scoop at 7:00. And here I'm gonna read hey, we're going on a tour of a museum. This is breaking independent citizen journalism. Make sure you send us money. Really, man? And that's why I think it's important to talk about this, because, I don't want to say that Ezra is shamelessly, trying to crowdsource money to extend his Euro trip. But you cannot tell me that going to a museum is news. You can't tell me that going to a museum in Hungary while you happen to be in Europe is news. It's content. It's YouTube content. Like if I was like a YouTuber and I'm like, yo, hey, cool, there's like this Holocaust museum and I'm going to talk about it. Sure, that's content. But to say that like this is like independent citizen journalism, that's a stretch. That's a stretch. And it wouldn't be so bad because Ezra could have done something like that. He could have said, hey, I'm just, because I want to be generous while I'm here, I want to share this story. Here you go. I was on a Euro trip and I'm just checking out this Holocaust museum. And I thought I would share the story. I thought it was beautiful, but it wasn't that, is it? It's not that, is it? It's, hey guys, this is a news report. This is a news report just like any other. This is not just me visiting. This is not just me visiting a Holocaust museum and filming it and calling it news. Make sure you donate to thetruthabouthungary.com. And back to my point. What is the outcome? What is the outcome of something like that? And I hope this is kind of like the worst example they have, because this is a pretty bad example. You're going to Hungary to look at a museum to make some content. Is that saving the country? Is that stopping Trudeau? What is that doing? Chat, what is that doing? Is there anyone in chat who can explain to me what's going on? I would love to know. But, all right, we've almost been going for an hour here. What else did I want to cover? We got a super chat here from Jane Bray. Nobody loves a hero till the government is dragging you off to jail. Very true. Very true. It's once again, we've seen a pattern here of Rebel News leeching off content from Jeremy MacKenzie and profiting off of it. They have retweeted his viral videos in the past talking about Omar Khadr. They have used his screenshots that he got from an RCMP leaker and reposted it like they owned it, like they got that scoop themselves. Okay, they profited off of him being debanked. They covered the story and then they went out of their way to call him a drunk, crazy veteran. By the way, what kind of what kind of right-wing platform are you if you're going to do something like that? You're going to profit off of this guy. You're going to, you're going to associate yourself with him when it's convenient. And then when his name actually comes up, you're going to slander, basically slander his name. You're basically going to smear his name. Maybe not slander, but you're certainly muddying the waters of this person's character. And then again, calling him a Fed. Oh my God. And I'm just realizing I didn't even get to the spiciest part of the story. Silly me. During the trucker convoy, there was a lot of talks of using the Emergencies Act. We all know this. They were hyping up the Emergencies Act, and Diagolon got mentioned in the House of Commons. It got mentioned in the Senate, and a lot of lies, like the anti-hate lies around Diagolon in Jeremy's podcast community, was used and said by sitting politicians, sitting MPs in the House of Commons, and then also Canadian senators. Lies from anti-hate were repeated in the House of Commons and in the Canadian Senate to vilify both Jeremy and his podcast community, implying that they are essentially right-wing accelerationist terrorists. They want to start a race war. Literally, like that literally happened. That literally happened. That's crazy. That's so much just corrupt. Like there's so many things to say about how humiliating that is for our Canadian institutions at the highest level. That members of parliament would be saying this, that senators would be saying this. They basically didn't do their own research. They basically didn't care about the truth. They basically just wanted a scapegoat to blame the Emergencies Act on. If you're a journalist, that's a story that you want to cover. That's the other side of the story. Justin Trudeau blames meme country to justify the use of the Emergencies Act. Wow. And guess what? There was someone at Rebel News, I believe his nickname is K2, who was talking to Jeremy MacKenzie. Jeremy MacKenzie was explaining the story, sending the clips from the House of Commons, sending the clips from the Senate. This is really happening. This is a real story. And then they were about to interview Jeremy to share the story with the world on the Rebel News platform, which is a big platform. They have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube and on and on. But at the last second, they said, you know what? We're going to have to get back to you. Sorry. I think it was something came up. Something came up. We're not going to cover that story. Why? If you're Ezra Levant and you own Rebel News and part of your whole MO, part of your whole business plan is to humiliate Trudeau, humiliate the Trudeau regime, humiliate these MPs who are making a mockery of Canada. Like that just gets your blood pumping of how insane the corruption is and the lies. It's an incredibly humiliating story for the Trudeau regime, for the Canadian, power structure in general. But they didn't want to cover it. And the question is why? And I think the answer to that question speaks to, it's almost like it's too corrupt. It's almost like this story shows off that it's too corrupt. It's almost like it shows just how powerful this Canadian veteran podcaster named Jeremy MacKenzie is. It's almost too insane for people to handle, because it'll really be like, wow, like our institutions really are out of whack. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, because this is super, super relevant. And, because I'm sure people will say, hey, Greg, they're probably working for, Rebel News is probably working with Pierre Poilievre. Like, you never know. That might be the case. That might be happening. And the thing with that is I would never make those kind of accusations. I like to look at the facts. Okay. I like to look at what we know. Speculating is certainly something that we can do, but, like I said, it's the results. It's the results of what we're getting from these different players, from these different, organizations. But, and I apologize because I haven't fact checked this, but it's an interesting screenshot nonetheless, which says Pierre and Ezra go way back, like over 20 years. They wrote an op-ed together in 2002 as original advocates for merging the Canadian Alliance with the Progressives. Then it says, after Chrétien announced he would retire as Prime Minister of Canada in 2002, Poilievre and Ezra Levant, who practiced law at the time, wrote an op-ed advocating for the merger of the Canadian Alliance and Progressive Conservative parties. Looks like it's an excerpt from Wikipedia. And of course, that does not prove anything other than the fact that Ezra Levant and Pierre Poilievre have known each other for over 20 years. And if you consider that no one at Rebel News has really openly criticized Pierre Poilievre, kind of a little fishy. And I'll go back to what I originally tweeted about this, because I think this should certainly be a takeaway. Responding to Ezra saying he's a Fed, referring to Jeremy MacKenzie, I say, Ezra Levant just accused Jeremy MacKenzie of being a Fed with no evidence or explanation. I think he's sending this tweet out as a feeler to see the appetite or the backlash to collect data. Regardless, it's extremely suspicious gatekeeper behavior. Not a good sign if you like Rebel News. And it really is not a good sign. To me, this tweet, because as I said, I do believe it, he sent it out as a feeler. He might come out and say, I was just kidding about that. And then he'll be right on Jeremy's side trying to do some sort of op-ed or trying to profit out of the situation to help Rebel News and their bottom lines. But I think he sent it out as a feeler to feel the appetite, to see if there's going to be backlash of if I say something like that. But if it's very, very awful, because that kind of shows that he might be seeing Jeremy as a threat. He might be seeing Jeremy as a potential problem. So he wants to say, okay, let's see if I call this guy a Fed. Let's see what the response is. Let's see where people are at, right? Let's kind of gauge. Let's see what I can do to try and, get this person out of the way, or I don't know what's going through his head. But if you are collecting data, Ezra, respectfully, fuck yourself. That's my feedback on that tweet of he's a Fed. Go fuck yourself. Okay, that's my feedback. You can write that down with all the other responses you might have found in there. That is my feedback, is go fuck yourself. Okay, you are adding to the problems that Jeremy MacKenzie has had to deal with. Okay, you're adding to the many, many challenges that are in his way, and you're supposed to be the rebel commander. Like, it is so disgusting. Jeremy has had to fight in Afghanistan. He's had to come home and fight for the country. He's had to fight the vilification in the media. He's had to fight off people literally trying to kill him in jail because the TV in jail says he's a bad man. And then a bunch of the inmates wanted to kill him because he's some evil white supremacist. He's had to literally fight for his life in jail. He's fighting for his future in the courtroom. And now on top of that, he now has to get prepared, I guess, to fight you. He now has to fight people on his own side. He's had to fight Pierre Poilievre as well, who's also vilifying him. So, fuck you, man. That's too bad, because I don't want to necessarily come out and say it, but to me, it's like, does this confirm that Ezra Levant is just a gatekeeper for the establishment? I don't know. But if I was a gatekeeper for the establishment, I think this would be the type of behavior. And it's sad to see, because there's a lot of great work that comes out of Rebel News. There's a lot of great people who work for Rebel News. And, I'm sure me and Ezra would agree on a lot of things. He's retweeted me multiple times before. There's most things that we have in common. But I think, unfortunately, and this is going to sound nasty, but the difference is, I want what's best for the country and for Canadian people, and Rebel News might want what's best for their bottom line. Let's face it, folks, Justin Trudeau is probably good for Rebel News' bottom line, right? Because the more globalism, the more chaos and destruction, the more Rebel News can profit off of our despair. They can profit off of our fear. They can profit off of our anger by showing us the story and saying, hey, help support us. Where does that money go, though? What is the outcome? What do we get? And I'll also add this, because it's relevant, which is, remember when Rebel News did that whole thing of, hey, guys, we're going to Davos. We're going to Davos for the World Economic Forum. We're going to stop these guys. Make sure you send us money, because we're going to stop these guys in Davos. And sure, they got some great clips of making these international bureaucrats look like scumbags. What is that for the outcome, though? Is that a positive outcome? Or is that just kind of more content for us to get mad at and ruminate in our basement, like watching on our phone? Does that move the Overton window? Does that help us fight mass migration? Does that help us expose vaccine deaths in the Canadian public? Does that help us help more normies question the Canadian mainstream media and help move the Overton window? Does that help protect our kids, protect our future? It's a very important question, because it's the outcome. What fruit are these people bearing? I think I encourage everyone to start thinking about that, whether it's an individual, whether it's a politician, whether it's a platform, especially if there are people who ask for money a lot. Like, what is the outcome? with what these people are doing that's actually going to help save this country. Because, as I've said all throughout the show, this Pierre Poilievre guy and this Conservative Party of Canada is not bearing fruit, guys. It's rotten. It's rotten on the branch. Okay? I'm not going to go over all the examples. You can watch a previous episode, but it is bad. These guys won't even oppose mass migration. They won't even oppose the gender cult. They won't even oppose the vaccine deaths. And even worse, they kind of do this sleight of hand where they pretend to. And it's just really, really bad news bears. They're not fighting the news media, like I said before. And they're basically slaves to the media at this point. So they're slaves to the establishment. If you're a slave to the media, you're a slave to the establishment. So why are you donating to the Conservative Party of Canada? What fruit are we bearing from that? Yay, or we're a pro-slavery Conservative Party that wants us to be slaves to the neoliberal globalist New World Order and the media. Don't worry, guys. We're slaves to the neoliberal media with the Conservative Party. They're going to save us. I don't think so. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. This has been a really good episode, and I'm glad I got to do it on my birthday. I'm sorry if I missed any funny or insightful super chats. I do need to go get something to eat. But guys, thanks so much for watching. If you want to, I talked about him a lot tonight. So if you want to check out anything Jeremy MacKenzie, you can go to ragingdissident.com. Just in case you've never heard of him, that would be shocking to me if you've never heard of him. But ragingdissident.com here. Visit the Grift Shop if you want to donate to someone like him. If you want to donate to someone like me, you can go to gregwycliffe.com, where I'm going to continue to call out political subversion in Canada, especially as it pertains to the right wing. But hey, that's going to be it for us on the show. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, if you got a glass, raise a glass to Raging Dissident, to Jeremy MacKenzie, because we need to stand with this guy. Okay. We need to support him no matter what, because he's been bearing fruit for us. And we got to vote with our wallets. Okay, we got to vote with our wallets and figure out who is bearing fruit, who is giving us outcomes, and who is not. And we got to keep testing them, and we got to push back. Actually, sorry, one last thing here as well. You know, a reason why I wanted to do this emergency episode is because it really, really ticked me off that Ezra did this. Okay, because it's like he knows the size of his platform. He knows the size of influence that he has, and he's just going to, and he knows the consequences of calling somebody a fed, and he's still doing this. I really don't think he should be able to get away with this. He should not be able to get away with playing dumb, and because that's a bullshit excuse, I think. And then number two, he's being a bully. Okay, he's trying to bully and use the weight he has with his platform around, and bully Jeremy MacKenzie. I'm not going to stand for that. We need to stand up to one another. And the reason I made this episode, Ezra, if you're watching, back off. Don't do that. Okay? You're not going to get away with that. No, we're not going to put up with that. Not going to happen. Okay? And I swear to God, if you find some excuse to like sue me for defamation or something, like that is just like, wow, bro. That would be it'd be very entertaining and funny for a plethora of reasons. I should also mention, this is actually not the first time Ezra has done this. He's called a friend of mine, Tyler L. Russell, and Canada First. He called these guys feds at the trucker convoy. And Tyler Russell told me that after Ezra Levant tweeted out and said that he is a fed, that Tyler Russell is a fed, and that Canada First are a bunch of feds, they had older gentlemen at the trucker convoy apprehend them and get in their face and start to get physical with them. So Ezra knows that he has influence, and Ezra, if you didn't know, you put people in danger when you do that. And you're supposed to be a journalist. Hello, you're supposed to check the facts. You're supposed to look at the legal proceedings. Are you not? And then in this case, you're just going to willy nilly call somebody a fed. It's it's not good. And the other thing that I should mention as well is Ezra Levant is Jewish. This guy should know more than anyone the consequences of having people call you names, of being marginalized. I'm sure he could tell you all about how this happened in the past. leading up to the Holocaust, how it was so unfair to have someone brush you aside and not care about the facts and just call you these names and dismiss and bully you, right? Ezra should know all about how terrible bullying is being a Jewish man. Yet he does not hesitate to bully somebody else or bully some other group that in this case, I don't know. It's you hate to see it. You hate to see it, guys. You hate to see it. But we're not going to put up with it. We're not going to put up with it. And yeah, we got to stand up for one another. We got to stand up for one another. Anyway, thanks again so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the show, you can donate to some of the links below. You can become a member here on YouTube. You can also go to gregwycliffe.com for other donation options. And yeah, we have to start with ourselves. We have to honor ourselves and one another and not put up with this Fed jacketing, okay? We need to look at the facts. We need to look at the outcomes of what different people in the movement in Canada are giving us, and we need to reward the people who are bearing fruit, okay? And start to criticize and question the people who might not be bearing as much fruit. And as always, it is okay to demand higher standards. Thanks for watching, guys.